what kind of marketplace are we in? Is it a buyer's market, seller's market, balanced market, right? Because I think that will shift the tone of your conversation. So right now we're in seller's markets. So it means that there's a significantly bigger pool of buyers than there are houses for sale. So it's a competitive home buying situation, right? So most of the time our conversations now, which you have in the kitchen, I have like in the utility room at the end of the showing,
Okay.
you know,
and then
hiding
in the utility room.
Go outside, you know, but it's around basically like how much you want this house, you know, like if they have a budget of 500, we're walking around with a big bag of cash of 500, we got to figure out where to drop it, you know. And that's basically, obviously everybody wants good value and everybody wants a deal, but at the end of the day, like you're buying opportunities, you know, and depending what segment of the market you're in, some products or properties or neighborhoods are more scarce. You know, some people have been looking for a specific house for 2 years and now comes up on the market. So I think market conditions will dictate what's going on. And I think a house, it's very relevant information if the property's been on the market for 2 weeks, or if the property is expecting offers today and there's either 3 offers or 8 offers or 15
You're listening
offers.
to Realtor in Your Pocket podcast. Do you want a head start on buying, selling, or renting in Ottawa? You're in the right place. Every episode brings you great advice and insight that you can keep in your back pocket until you make your move. And now, here's your host, Nick Fundytus.
So this episode of the podcast, I've got Gab Varennes on today. So my friend, my longtime colleague here and former office roommate, and he's a very successful realtor. And we're going to talk about negotiations. So this is the third episode of a buyer series. So we're talking to buyers, specifically a first-time buyer, what happens in a negotiation. So everything from the moment you decide that you like a property to placing the offer and getting it accepted. So Gab, first of all, thanks for coming on this morning.
My pleasure. Happy to be
here. So you've got clients and then we're out looking at houses together and they decide that they love a property. Usually I find it's in the kitchen. They decide, okay, we're going to make an offer on this one. What happens next? What's the conversation that you're having with them?
I think it's first and foremost important to know what kind of market we're talking about, you know, like in that segment, if we're in the condo market or a townhome or a, you know, urban property, what kind of marketplace are we in? Is it a buyer's market, seller's market, balanced market, right? Because I think that will shift the tone of your conversation. So right now we're in seller's markets. So it means that there's a significantly bigger pool of buyers than there are houses for sale. So it's a competitive home buying situation, right? So most of the time our conversations now, which you have in the kitchen, I have like in the utility room at the end of the showing,
Okay.
you know, and then
hiding in the utility room.
Go outside, you know, but it's around basically like how much you want this house, you know, like if they have a budget of 500, we're walking around with a big bag of cash of 500, we got to figure out where to drop it, you know. And that's basically, obviously everybody wants good value and everybody wants a deal. But at the end of the day, like you're buying opportunities, you know, and depending what segment of the market you're in, some products or properties or neighborhoods are more scarce. You know, some people have been looking for a specific house for 2 years and now comes up on the market. So I think market conditions will dictate what's going on. And I think a house, it's very relevant information if the property's been on the market for 2 weeks, or if the property is expecting offers today and there's either 3 offers or 8 offers or 15 offers, right? So I think that key piece of information will dictate what the house will sell for, and that you only really get until the end. So most of my conversations are, you know, you try to have your clients prepared, right? So like, what do we do? Like, I don't want a phone call. If offers are due at 4, I don't want a phone call at 3:30 saying, hey, I want to buy it. I just decided now. No, it doesn't work like that, you know? And then, so I rather have clients prepared and then say, okay, if we don't want to buy it, that's okay. We'll buy something else, right? But what do we do if there's 2 offers? And what do we do if there's 12 offers or somewhere in between, you know? So yeah, and I think the ultimate objective I find for me is just to ask questions, really relevant questions about them to help them kind of figure out what they want And most importantly is how bad do they want this house, right? So, you know, and the tricky part, I find it's even when you have like your budget's 5 and you just offer 490 or 495 or 5 every time, it's kind of simple because you're like, I'm just going all in. I have a short stack and, you know, kind of, I need to double up right now. But it's trickier when people are upgrading to houses because people have really good amounts of equity. Like if you bought a townhouse 7 years ago for 315 and your mortgage is at 220 now, like you have like, you can afford what you want ish, you know, depending what you're really looking for and how big a jump you're making. But if you're upgrading from a townhome to detached in the suburbs, you know, like that person, if they've been in their house 5-7 years, should be in a capacity to buy that bigger home. You know, it's a little trickier if you're coming downtown or if you're coming to a more expensive neighborhood or something like that. But if you're moving within the neighborhood, it's usually relative. So that's a trickier one. Gab, I'm approved for $1 million, but the house is listed at $699. You're like, oh shit. Yeah, that one's you have a bit more time to think about, you know. So
So let's make it specific then. So we're in today's market. We're in a seller's market. You've got a buyer who is looking, let's say Orleans, because it's a market that we both operate in a fair bit, and they're looking at, you know, the 3-bedroom townhouse, probably on what's that little street just off of Jeanne d'Arc. You know what I'm talking about? As you come up the hill, is that townhouses? What's that called?
It's gonna come back to me. Obviously, I can't remember when we're live on a podcast. But
yeah, it's N1. It's the first
that one. Yes, that street. Yes. Yeah, that street.
So let's call it Jobin Crescent over by Blair and Ogilvie. Yeah. There. Do you know the ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So 3-bedroom townhouse in there. They're looking. You know, list prices in there have been 450 up to 500,000 now. Clients are in a showing on the Crescent there. Things are coming up, but not super regularly. So you know that there will be more stuff later in the season. But they go in the kitchen and say, hey, Gab, I think this is the property. We look on the MLS. It's Tuesday. They're taking offers on next Monday. What are the steps we're taking next?
My intent is to bring my clients to put in an unconditional offer. That's how you.
Okay.
That's my ultimate objective. So now I'm trying to figure out if that's a possibility or not.
Now, for the viewer who might not have ever watched the show before, who might not have ever bought a house, what's an unconditional offer?
So in a normal market or a
balanced market,
yeah, in a balanced market, you know, you find the property, you negotiate back and forth with the buyer and seller, you agree on closing date and price. And then typically you would have 5 to 7 business days to hire a home inspector and go through that process. They send you the report, you review it, do any additional due diligence based on that, send your listing to your mortgage broker. They look at your file with your T4s and letters of employment and notice of assessments, take the MLS listing of the house you bought, the agreement, send it to the lender for approval. It comes back, yay, you're getting a mortgage of $440,000 for September 1st. That's awesome. But now we're in a market where we just have to do that work beforehand, right?
And I think that's a really important distinction, because there's going in and putting in an unconditional offer where you haven't done any due diligence, but you're saying, hey, we're going to put in an unconditional offer, but we're also doing our homework. We're just doing it first.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. So I tell people my intent is to bring you to an unconditional offer, and then people, they stop breathing, and it's like, you know, and then I'm like, but doesn't mean we're not prepared. It just means we're better prepared. You know, it means that, you know, you've literally gone through the process the right way. You know, you've had that first orientation meeting where ideally maybe you interviewed your bank person and a broker, and then you decided who you wanted to work with. And then after that, you send that person you need to fill out the application. You need to send them their 90, like it's a lot more strenuous now getting people getting a mortgage, right? They need to go through your bank records, they go back way further, man. It's like,
yeah.
So, and then people are like, oh, I'll get approved. And I'm like, yeah, but it's the time you have to find this stuff. You know, there might be a couple might not know about your girlfriend's, you know, spending habits, or, you know, the fact that you co-signed for your brother's car loan, or you signed up for a random Visa card at a Sense game, you know, like that kind of stuff kind of matters, but it only comes to fruition when you're looking to buy a house. So if that's all sorted and you know where your limitations are, you know what you need to acquire the house, you know what it's going to cost on a ongoing basis, so your ongoing expenses, and you can even send your lender the property that you're looking at buying. They can screen it, so like most of that legwork can happen beforehand. And even with the inspection, like people are like, oh, no conditions, I'm going to do something reckless. Like the consumer just goes straight to the worst case scenario. They're like, holy shit, I'm going to buy a house, I'm not going to do an inspection, and then the foundation will be leaking, and I'll, you know, the bank foreclosure sign's going to come up on my lawn because I'm putting 5% down on my property, you know? I mean, the job of the real estate agent is to screen the house, you know? So like, rarely do I, when I bring in the home inspection, is there a huge surprise that you haven't really at least been aware of at the showing?
Right.
And then sometimes the good agents will have an inspection report that they've paid a third-party inspector, which is useful. Yeah. But, you know, obviously you should get
the listing agent, you mean?
That's right. Yeah, the agent representing the seller. But ideally you have, you know, your own inspector who comes and takes a look. But that comes with risk, right? So you have a bit more skin in the game. You have to spend $300, $400, $500 up front in the hopes that you don't get it. But the reality is if you're keen on this house, the best way, like if there's 6 or 7 offers, like the seller will not be accepting an offer with conditions.
Right.
Or you'll have to pay so much more money for that condition, for that seller to take on that risk, right? So let's say this townhouse is listed for $475. There's 8 offers, you know, like if somebody puts in an offer of like $500 with like an inspection condition, and then has that same offer with no conditions, they'll pick the one with no conditions every time. Now, what's that number for the seller? Will they accept an offer? Like, will they take a conditional offer on a home inspection for $1,000 more? Probably not. $5,000 more? Probably not. But then it's like, is it 10? Is it 25? Is it 40? I've seen it for as much as $60,000.
Yeah, I had 75. One where my buyers got it for 75 less than the other offer because ours was unconditional.
That's right.
And ours had simply done their homework ahead of time. And we were prepared. We were quick. Well, I just say like we got the buyers prepared. They were able to move fast when the time came. And ultimately they were confident enough to put in a good offer and stick to, focus on the value of the house. I feel like I've found, when you're saying like, what's an inspection or what's an unconditional offer worth to a seller? I feel like it's generally worth at least 1 or 2%. But I've seen circumstances where it's been more.
Yeah, I would even go on the top end of that. Like in the pandemic, you don't want to go through this twice.
Oh, now especially, I think it's worth more. But like even in a balanced market, I think it's worth 1 or 2%, and it's a good way to operate if you're serious about a property.
100%. Like how did your landlord give you notice and you have to be kicked? Like you need a place to live by August 31st.
Then you need to be prepared.
Are you just waiting for the good deal to come around and for the prices to fall down 20% like CMHC thinks it is? And I think that just requires an honest conversation. There's nothing wrong. I find buyers sometimes hold back because they know if they've been looking, they know it's a competitive home buying situations. They're talking, guaranteed they have somebody within their network, family, friend, grandma, aunt, colleague, soccer mom, something like that, that's been in the market in some shape or form. And anecdotally, what they hear is that it's a really competitive home buying situation. But so they kind of hold back and say, well, I'm going to put in an offer, but I don't want to give it my all because I'm scared I might not get it, And then it comes with that disappointment and that emotional roller coaster. But at the same time, it's like, there's nothing wrong with really going for it. And then if it doesn't work out, then at least you know that you gave it your best shot. And that's significantly easier to kind of go through that grieving process of not getting the house than it is being like, you go through the process, figure out everything with your mortgage broker, and then a week later, you're like, crap, we could have offered 20 grand more if we got rid of our car, So, yeah, YOLO.
Yeah. It's the first time anyone's used YOLO on the podcast here. So it's a landmark time. Okay, so you've decided on the house and you've got a plan. So I would say what we're talking about now is that the most important part of your negotiation happens in the preparation, but it's time to actually put something on paper. So you write up your offer. This is a nice unconditional offer. These days, it's usually for an amount above the asking price, a certain percentage above, based on what it looks like the value of the house is and what it's worth to the buyer. So I'm saying to my buyers, saying, if you're in a multiple offer situation, we'll have an offer prepared if somehow you're the only offer in. We'll have an offer, what's our game plan if there's 1 or 2 offers in, or what's the game plan if there's more than 2? So there's 3, 4, 5, 10 offers in, what's your best offer going to be? So we're drawing these up, and let's say there's going to be 8 offers on this place on Jobin Crescent. And what else are we going to do for the buyer to help them get this property beyond just having a good offer? Let's suppose we're going to be close with another one. We're going to put an offer of 550 on this townhome, and somebody else is going to put an offer of 550 or 551 or something like that. It's very close, very, very similar to ours. How do we make sure that our buyer's offer gets chosen?
So when you're going through a house, the buyers always wonder who's living here. Are they cool? Wonder what they're like. And it's the same thing from the seller. Like anybody who's lived in their home, like if you're selling your home, I would be interested to know who's buying your home. Now, when I'm representing my buyers, I always ask the listing agent out of respect, do these sellers care to know who's buying their house? And most of the time that answer is yes. Sometimes you'll have the really transactional people who are like, it's just business, we're looking to maximize our proceeds from the sale. That's why you're here, but most of the time people would like to know. So, and I think effort matters. People respect effort, and at the same time, people want to find, like if you're a 40-year-old couple selling your townhome and buying a bigger home now, and you've got a few kids that are a bit older, like you want to see yourself as, like you want the buyer, like a lot of the times I tell my sellers that we're looking for the version of yourself from 10, 15 years ago. And then you tell them and they're like, yeah, I guess that's true. Where was I 10, 15 years ago? So if you can kind of build that rapport with the sellers and with the agent, that like the people who are buying your house are really awesome. And you and as agent, as a buyer, are really prepared and very easy to deal with. I think that goes a long way. I know that for my clients to get the house, I need to have at least a listing agent on my side, on my team.
And how do we do that? Because I agree with that 100%. And I've seen it be important in many negotiations. So how do you get the listing agent on your side? Or conversely, how do we see people not get the listing agent on their side?
I think when they're inherently skeptical, when they're like, they're hiding something, I'm just waiting to find out what it is. And it's like, well, maybe there's a stain in the ceiling because their kid was like throwing spaghetti sauce and then they wiped it down with a magic eraser and there's a mark there, And I think just giving people the benefit of the doubt and just until proven otherwise, assume that everybody's working in their best interest, right? But, I think as an agent, I try to be courteous, show up on time, wear a mask now, give feedback, ask, read the listing before asking a question. Seems like very pivotal things. Be grateful that, we have the opportunity to buy this house, give them a very good, clean offer with a deposit. And, if the sellers want to know, share your story, either write a letter, make a quick video like this on your iPhone. It doesn't have to be perfect. The more human it is, I think
it's better if it's not perfect.
100%. Like I had one where like, it's a single mom buying it. And then, she's like she's just like in the moment, right? Her dog's barking, her kid's like trying to eat there. And she's like, I just really want this house, and then that's endearing, right? Like that's just human. And I think, do the sellers really care? A couple $1,000 here, a couple $1,000 there? Some of them do, but not all,
like that's where they don't. Yeah.
I've had sellers sell the house to me for less because they thought my buyers would take better care of the house because they've been in their house for 50 years.
Yeah. So let's just say that again, you've had where your buyers have bought a house for less than a competing offer because the sellers liked your buyers, who they were.
Correct.
I think that's important. And I think people think that that putting in a letter and putting in that effort to be likable or just share your story, if you think the sellers might care about it, can be wasted effort. And for some sellers, maybe it is, but I think that that's important for a listener to hear that that's real. Like that's, it doesn't work on every transaction, and it is very important to have the best offer on paper, but it's also important to be the best buyer, like the best version of yourself that you're bringing to the offer. And I think that's part of negotiation that separates kind of that last, if 90% of it is the offer on paper, I think the last 10% or the last 5% is other factors.
Well, and it's right when you're talking about 10, 12 offers, like in my experience, the winning offer doesn't win by a substantial amount.
No.
Like you're within a $10,000 range. Like if you're winning, you're not overpaying by more than, depending on the price point, but like at 500,000, I don't think you're winning by more than 10, No,
not that price range. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, it kind of matters. Like, and if you were selling your house, like you've been in your house for how many years now? You've raised your kids there. Let's say you're relocating to whatever, across town because you want to be closer to something over there, your family or something. Like you would kind of care to know who's buying the house. Like most people would just like to know that, it's like, yeah. And it's basically like dating, like you got to build your little online profile and like, don't oversell yourself. Don't put out fake pictures, and then the person shows up and you're like, you don't look like this.
No catfishing in the listing.
No catfishing. I wasn't gonna say it, but I'm happy you did. So, and I think when you're writing that letter, writing that video, just be real.
Yeah.
Hey, I work here. Hey, this is me and my partner, or this is what I like to do. This is what I do for work. This is what I do for a living. Here's why I appreciate your house, and hopefully, things work out and we can have a beer in the backyard afterwards and celebrate.
Yeah. When we bought our house, we had a beer with the sellers. Awesome. A few days before closing, they had us in the back porch out here, which I'm kind of looking at out the window. And then she walked us around the yard because she had this really great garden and showed us where all the things were planted. And we were gardening rookies, but she had drawn a map of her yard and said, this gets planted here, needs this gets planted here, it needs partial shade. And,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. But you see, how many years ago was that?
That was 4 years we've been in this house.
And now 4 years later, that experience or that moment is what you remember.
Yeah.
Right? You don't remember like what time, was it a Sunday? Maybe you do, but like that's the
we
first.
Still get mail for them somehow.
Yeah. They need a good real estate agent who can tell them to forward their mail through Canada Post.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first step in negotiation is the preparation. The second step is, being a good buyer, basically. Mm-hmm. And then if there's 10 offers on there, generally speaking, in this current market, your offer is going in, and most of the time that you're going to hear that you either won or you lost, right? There are some exceptions when it's close. So let's talk about what happens when it's close. Mm-hmm. What might the listing agent say to you, the buyer agent?
So because there's what's required by law,
mm-hmm.
right? So by law, the buyer has to know how many offers are competing against. That has to be disclosed.
Right. But they may not know what's in the other offers. Like they're not allowed to know. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So the only information that you're working with is the price, the closing date, the what the seller would like to include for sale in the house. And other than that, that's it. But the one thing that I always ask the listing agent is, how do you expect to deal with it? Right? Because some agents have a very kind of strict process. Mm-hmm. Some people are just like, oh yeah, dude, offers due at 4. I got an appointment at 5 o'clock. I'm just going to pick the best one. And it's just kind of this very fast transactional thing. Some of them, it takes 24 hours, right? Like I've had some where it's like, it takes 24 hours. So
you don't even learn until the next day, whether you won or lost. Yeah.
And I am always the last person to submit. Always.
Okay.
I always offers to do it for. I'm always submitting at 4:30, 4:45. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think there's a lot of information that is very. It's either I'm first or I'm last. Like I'm either the first one trying to scare off other people, like offers.
Yeah. And I'll do that one as well.
At 9 a.m. Or I'm coming in hot at 4:30, 4:45 because I'm waiting to know all the information that I can, right? So because if you're submitting an offer and it's like at that time you think there's 4, but then in reality there's 9 by the time everything's all said and done. I want to offer then, So yeah, that's what I would say to that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so negotiation is in an optimal situation, you're going to win, and you're going to get your offer accepted. It becomes a firm purchase if you've got an unconditional offer. But there's going to be situations where there's 17 offers, there's 16 disappointed buyers. If you're one of those 16 disappointed buyers, what are you going to do? How are you going to recoup from that?
Well, I like to, before we enter this process, I'll tell people that this is not your house.
Mm-hmm.
This is not your house. You're just putting an offer on this
property. A house.
That's right. Yeah. So none of this roller coaster and up and down and this and that, because I can't do that. I can't, it's just, I don't think it's the best way to go through the process, but I mean, it's naturally to feel disappointed. So to answer your question.
And we feel like we love our clients, we care about them. We want to have a win for them. And also just as competitive people, we hate to lose. Yeah. I would say, is that accurate? Moneyball. You know the movie Moneyball. So I love winning, but I hate losing even more. And there's a difference, right? Cool. Is the line? Yeah. But at the same time, if we're doing a great job for them, yeah, I agree. You can't get caught up. We can't get caught up on the emotional roller coaster, and we're doing a favor for our clients by not letting them get caught up on it either.
Yeah. Because if I get really caught up emotionally, I'm like, Nick, just add $40,000, it's like, well, is that wise? Because sometimes you got to rein in your clients and sometimes you have to nudge them. Right. Yeah. And I think that's the intuition of being a real estate agent. And that's why you need to know your clients.
Yeah.
Because there's some people I cannot nudge. They'll punch me in the face. There's other ones that need permission to offer a bit more and put their best forward,
Yeah.
And then there's intuition of knowing if you believe, Nick, that this is the right house for them, knowing what I feel like I have the obligation to give them the nudge and just say, look, guys, I don't know what's going to happen, but here are my recommendations, deal with it. Because it's at the end of the day, I'm not living there. I'm not paying for it. Right? It's your house, this is your money. Right? So, and that's, sometimes that's why every situation is really different at the end of the day. But yeah, if you're looking to buy a house, I think one, you really need to find somebody that you trust and relate with, I was talking to somebody yesterday and they're like, yeah.
You're talking about when selecting your agent, you mean?
Yeah, because it goes back to that, sometimes, and people I find stumble upon a real estate agent way too much. It makes no sense to me, right? This person has so much influence, which comes with pros and cons, right? Into where you will live for the next few years of your life.
Yeah.
And you need, I met this guy stumbling through this, I called and then he was nice. So then I'm working with him, but it's who is this guy? Does he work in the neighborhoods that you want to buy? Is he involved in the community? How much experience does he have? How many houses has he sold? When he puts in offers, how many, does he win 20% of the time or 80, did he just start? Because when I started, I was 22. Everybody knew I had no experience. But then, 45-year-old John or whoever starts and they're like, oh, this guy's knows what he's doing. He's old.
Yeah.
So I had to prove to people that I'm like, okay, well, I kind of know what I'm doing. I'm just young, so yeah, really,
I think that would be a good, if you, just to stereotype, if, I feel that this would be a good question for buyers to interview if they meet a realtor who is right around retirement age, because there's some people who get into real estate as a retirement gig. And this would maybe be they used to be a teacher or something like that. So if you see someone who looks experienced, maybe ask them anyways.
Don't assume.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, I'm a very casual guy. Like, I wear a t-shirt, it says keep it simple. I wear t-shirts like that all the time. I don't wear blazers or suits, or I drive a Jeep. Sometimes I bike to my showings.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes people are a little bit surprised by what I look, but I don't care anymore. Like, I could not care less. And whether it's like last week I sold a $1.5 million house, and then in the afternoon, a $191,000 condo. I love that. Everybody wants the same things, you know, like everybody wants a nice place to live for as cheap as possible in the neighborhood that they want. Like, it's not, and I think, like, I don't know, and especially talking about commission, like when you're buying, like, some people don't know that they don't have to pay, like, it's a complimentary services ish, you know, like it's not, there's no out-of-pocket expense.
Right. It's the same. It's basically the same commission, whether you went straight through the listing agent or whether you had your own buyer agent, generally speaking.
100%.
Very close.
Well, I would say that when you're going, like, people are like, well, I don't want a buyer's agent. I can do the research myself. And I'm just going to go to the listing agent, and then I'm just going to assume that that guy's ethically and morally flawed, and then he'll accept my offer because he'll get twice the commission. Okay, that's a bad strategy in my opinion. And why I think that's a bad strategy is because, like, okay, you find the house, like, you still have to get it. Like, you know, and that's where like, I'm a closer, you know, like, and I don't mean that to be pushy or you know, it's just like, are we buying it or not at the end of the day? Like, how much do you want to buy it? Let's be honest about how much we want to buy it. On the 1 to 10, how much do I want this house scale? Are we at 12?
Yeah.
Or are we at 4 because we just started and we're saving money and we'd like to have another 10 grand in the bank by the time we buy something? Like, and that's okay. Just let's call it for what it is, right? But back to going to the listing agent, it's like, why? Why is that the best strategy for you? You know, do you have realtor trauma? Is there somebody who, like,
have you been hurt?
Have you been hurt? You know, did your high school sweetheart break your heart and now you don't want to love again? You know, like, in a nutshell, like, is this what's going on? So, and then at the end of the day, like, the listing agent, like, so you're coming in, like, it's so hard when you're the listing agent because you have this random person that gets just dropped in, like, on the scene. Yeah. And you have no idea who they are. You know, you have no idea where they've been from a COVID standpoint. Are they taking it seriously or not? You have no idea if they're pre-approved, how serious they are. You know, do they have money? So a lot of people look like they have money, but they don't. And some people look like they're broke, but they're millionaires. So it's like, it's kind of a tricky thing to figure out. And then even if that listing agent is really doing his job properly, he can't really consult you because he can't give advice. You know, if you're putting in an offer with a listing agent, you're either getting represented by him, in which case he cannot disclose to you what the motivations are of either party, and he can't disclose whether or not, let's say you're offering for 6, that you're actually qualified for 7, or why you're buying it because your dad lives across the street. Like, none of that can get disclosed, right? So assuming that everybody's acting ethically, which is, in my experience, 95% of the time, it's an uphill battle. You're pushing a ball up a road, right? And then the other option is customer service, where you're just, the client's barking and then Nick's at his computer and he's like, okay, $575 inspection on condition, $1,000 deposit, perfect. What's your name? John and Mary. Okay. You know, it's just, it doesn't work. And I think if you actually track the data, the amount of people that go to the listing agent and write offers, I think would lose 90% of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. If you were able to see where those offers came from and how many were actually successful, the double end where a listing agent sells a property is already at like a tiny fraction of the market to begin with. And if you think that, like, those are just the ones that you can see that won, like, there's a bunch of other ones that wrote that were just blown away. And in the current market, I think it's probably even a lower percentage that win. So anyways, I think that's a good overview of negotiation for a first-time buyer. So to recap. So first of all, a good negotiation is done in the preparation. Would you agree?
100%.
Number 2, then there's those intangible things that you have to be a good buyer. You have to be willing to, especially in a seller's market, to make the purchase and the negotiation as smooth as possible for the seller. So whether that's offering them things like a closing date that they want, having a letter so that you understand, or a letter or conversation so that they understand who the buyers are, that they will like you and that will like your agent. Number 3 was what we were talking about on number 3 was was using a buyer agent and not trying to go it alone. And so I think if you do those things, I think that is a good introduction to negotiation, especially in the current market.
Yeah, I think to add a few things, I think like interview for your buyer's agent. Like your people get 3 quotes for a roof, but will not interview 3 real estate agents.
Yeah.
Like pick your buddy from hockey, pick the guy in your neighborhood, and pick the parent, the guy that your parents recommend, and just talk to him for 20 minutes. Call him.
Yeah, and you can get a pretty good feel.
100%. Who do you feel comfortable with? Like it's an intimate process, right? So.
And a good agent doesn't mind if you interview other agents.
They will respect you for
because
it.
we know that you're doing your due diligence. We know you're prepared, and we know in the end we look good. If somebody interviews me and 2 other agents, or somebody interviews you and 2 other agents, and they pick one of the other agents, I'm going to follow up and ask with why, because I'm a professional agent and I want to know where I messed out and where I'm going to do better next time.
Yeah.
In the end, like it stinks to lose a client or not get a client at the beginning, but it's an opportunity to raise your game.
Yeah.
The ones who are scared of people interviewing a few agents are the ones who are scared that they're going to get beat every time.
You can't go through this process out of fear. It's a bad strategy, and it's a elimination process. It's not a selection process. Like just by figuring out where you don't want to live is actually very useful. Sometimes I ask them, okay, where do you want to live? They're like, I'm flexible. I'm like, okay, where would you hate living? And then you kind of funnel it down,
Yeah.
And then the other part is like, don't be shy. Like communication is so important. And buyers change their mind as they go through the process. And to me, I expect it.
Yep.
I expect that, they'll look at a condo, and then at some point they'll be like, I can actually buy a freehold. And then sometimes they're like, I don't want to tell my real estate agent, I'm scared, but it's like, dude, this is kind of like, we need to know these things. We need to know the parameters, so, but I think it goes back to trust. And you and I we come from the same school of thought, and that's from relationships, right? Like we're good at managing relationships. We take care of our people. They take care of us. They send us business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both of us are working largely by referral at this point.
Almost exclusively, right? So yeah. And I think that's the best way to go through the process, is have a really good, intimate relationship with your clients, professional, prepared, Yeah.
Right on. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. And I think this is going to be a good informative episode for new buyers, even people who are in the thick of it right now, might want to watch this and just say, the people who are getting beat up over a few offers, like they're getting in on the 17 offers or the 8 offers out there and losing a couple, say, hey, maybe I need to take a step back. Maybe I need a new agent, one of the 2 on here. But even if you've got your own agent, maybe take this back and say, hey, what do I need to do differently when I'm thinking of going to the negotiation table?
And you know what? We're positive guys. You're a positive guy. I've spent time with you.
Oh yeah.
And it's a daunting, scary process. And sometimes you just have to be a cheerleader and keep your head up. Like literally,
yes.
A deal of a lifetime comes around every month.
I stole that from you. I think that's your grandma's expression, isn't it? Because your grandma was a realtor. Yeah. And the deal of the century comes around every 2 weeks. There's other fish in the sea. You can tell a lot of analogies to dating. You'll learn to love again. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. It's not you, it's me. Keep going. Yeah. It wasn't meant to be. Yeah. So, but it's, buying a house it's a privilege, and now it's a competitive situation, and just like running a marathon, like sometimes you have to stop and walk, but you have to get to the finish line, Yeah, at some point.
Right on. Well, speaking of the finish line, I think we're at it now. Thanks for coming on today, Gab. I really, really appreciate it.
Pleasure. I finished most of my conversations by saying it's not goodbye, it's see you later.
Well, it is see you later for now. I know you're going out on a camping trip, so have a good one. And I will have this will be up for you to watch when you get back.
Looking forward to it.
All right. See you, buddy.
Bye.
That was episode 6 of Realtor in Your Pocket podcast. Thank you very much for listening. And thank you to Gab for coming on the show today. I always enjoy talking with Gab, and I thought it was a great conversation about negotiation today. remember, if you're looking to purchase a home and you want to have a successful negotiation, start with preparation. Make sure you find a wonderful realtor who can help you through the process. Make sure that you come across as a good, clean, low risk buyer to the seller, because they're looking for someone with a minimal amount of hassle. And then fourth, just make sure that you know your market, and your realtor will help you with that. Thank you to my wonderful marketing admin, Stephanie Ross, who helps produce the show every couple of weeks and make sure it gets out to where it needs to go. Thank you to you for listening and subscribing, and for the reviews as well. I never turn down a 5-star review on iTunes or Google, and ultimately it's those reviews that help other people find the show. Have a wonderful week. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with next episode on the conditional period of the home search. Until then, stay home, stay healthy, and stay safe.